All right, we do not have a football coach on this time. I'm going to screw up your name. I apologize. Kacy Standohar.
Standohar, actually.
Standohar. Dang it.
That's all right. Hey, I could be a football coach someday. You never know.
Well, that's true. That's true. Currently not a football coach.
Right.
Sideline reporter, broadcaster, ESPN, FS1, IHSA, BigEast. I can go on and on, but big time guest. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Steve. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you might be the non-football coach or something. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Exactly. I love that. I mean, look, I deal with football coaches a lot, and we were talking earlier, I know the etiquette, so I could pretend to be a coach for a day.
You could. I'm sure you know something.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how did you end up in the broadcasting world? Like, what kind of set that on? What's the path been like and getting through those doors to work with big companies?
Sure, absolutely. And I think you understand this. I mean, you're a coach as well, so you get the grind of working in sports and just what it takes. And I think that I started as a journalism major at Youngstown State University, was from Ohio originally, so I studied journalism, and I thought I wanted to be like a print journalist. And I really thought like I'm going to write for a magazine or a newspaper. And that was kind of like what I really wanted at the time. And then I took an internship in TV for a local station, and I really liked that. Mm-hmm. I was like, this is more exciting. This is more live in the moment. And so I really latched on to that, and I decided to pursue a broadcasting career. And, I had a roundabout path. I was a producer for a while, and just wanted to make connections in the industry like you do as a coach. A lot of times coaches hire their friends or people they know or people that had a good season. It's kind of similar in the broadcasting world too. It's a little bit about who you know, how hard you work, and a little bit of luck. And so I was a producer for several years in Columbus and in Youngstown, Ohio. And then once I was done with that, I kind of went a roundabout way, did some marketing, social media jobs, advertising jobs. And it wasn't really until I moved to Chicago in 2018 that I started to immerse myself more into sports broadcasting, sports media. And I just came here kind of and said, I'm going to start from scratch again. And I'm going to build a demo reel, which is like, the player highlights, really important to showcase my work. And I even worked for free for a little bit. I reached out to some local teams like the Schaumburg Boomers and the Chicago Bandits and, women's softball teams and high schools and different things. And I just said, hey, can I come out and do some interviews and report and do this? And they were like, yeah, we can't pay you, but sure. And I was like, that's okay. Because for me, the experience was the payment. I needed the experience, the reps. Right. So I did that for a while and got better and better and started to feel, a little bit more strong about my demo and what I was capable of doing. And that's when I, started getting paid for gigs. And that felt like a step up for me. And I started doing high school games on CN100, which is no longer a thing. It, ended during COVID, but I'm sure you're familiar with that. Yep. And, just started to work my way up, work for the BigEast conference. And the better I did at those things, the more opportunities came, and just kept networking, and that's kind of where I'm at now. And it's been a great experience. I'm not quite where I want to be yet, but I've also been really proud of how far I've come.
Yeah. Was there any barriers? Because I know this is a question people hate, but sports is a men's world and this and that. But I don't look at it that way. I look at it as, are you a hard worker? Are you doing the right things? I don't care about any of that other stupid stuff. Was there any a barrier thing of because there's a lot of women in sports that do a very good job. Was there any roughness of that or barriers, or was it just, I'm going to work hard?
A little bit. It's still, as much as there's women in play-by-play roles, analyst roles, sideline roles, the glass ceiling, the door is open, right? And that's great. But you still have to prove yourself. You still have to know your stuff. And there are still men and women out there who are like, what do you know? What do you really got? So I think we still have to prove ourselves. And I came into the competitive market that is, number 3, Chicago, which I came here with a blind optimism. And I was like, I could do this. And then it was really hard. And I was competing with very established people. And I was like, okay, this is actually harder than I thought, but I'm not going to quit. I can't quit. And I don't quit because I love it. And so, there's definitely some challenges where it's oh, we've already got someone, we've already had someone for years, or we're going to use this guy instead, or, it's just that kind of business. And so, but I will say, like, it's also helped me, because to have a female presence on a show, sometimes that's what networks want, and what they've been lacking. So it has helped me in a way too. And I'm really grateful for people that have taken a chance on me.
Yeah. Cause I hate hearing that. It's like a woman can't do this or that. And which is men can't do certain things either. So I look at it from both sides, but if you're working hard, understand what you're doing, understand what you're saying, and understand this, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
I'm that people make it political. I'm like, no, why can't we just be good people and work hard? I don't understand. That comes from the coaching side of me, I guess. So.
Right. And so that's how it is. I know that's how it is for coaching too. It's hard work, good record, who you know, and that's part of it. And so, it comes to the territory, but I've just been grinding, hustling, and I'm really grateful for the opportunities that I've had so far, like being able to cover the IHSA state finals for basketball and football the past 2 years, which I know we talked about, but that's such a joy for me because, it's Illinois high school sports' biggest stage, and it's cool to get to travel and do different games and meet coaches and players and highlight these kids that are just having great years. And it's truly made me better, and it's just made me so grateful to be a part of that in Illinois, because it's a big deal. So definitely really proud of that. And high school sports are hard because you have players that have never really been interviewed by media, and so you're trying to pull good answers out of them and kind of teach these kids, and they're teaching you stuff too. So it's a challenge that I just didn't even know I needed.
I was about to ask that because, like, they get interviewed a little bit by like a TV person or something like that. But like, how awkward is it to go up to a high school kid that maybe has never had a camera in their face, or even a coach? Like, sometimes us coaches, we don't have a camera in our face. We just stay in our own little bubble.
Yeah, it's very true. And so you get to know which coaches are going to give you good answers and which ones are a little bit more, straight and just kind of to the point. And so you kind of have to figure that out, but have definitely asked some really great questions to kids who were just like, it was just like over their head. And they were just like, yeah, we're a really great team. We worked really hard. And I'm like, oh, and so, but I get it. They're young, they're high school kids. And you forget that when they're on this big stage, and especially with high school basketball. I mean, look at all the products that have come out of Chicago basketball, the NBA. And it's just such a historic thing to be the original March Madness here in Chicago. So, and in Illinois. And I'm really proud of that. And just the challenge of interviewing high school athletes is just been awesome.
Right. Well, then even to find like information on the teams, because colleges are so much easier to find things. High school, like, I don't know how you would find information on them and have all this information of like how, even when you guys talk about the playoffs, like in football, I'm thinking of football, you guys will show the bracket and talk about each game that led up to that. Like, how can you find information on that team and these players?
Yeah, luckily I have great producers who are really helpful and great teammates. My play-by-play and analysts are awesome. Mark Lindo, Dave Bernhardt, Matt Rodewald, all these guys, and just so many people have been so helpful. But we do coaches calls with all the coaches that make it to the state finals, and we kind of have like this really, because it ends pretty quickly. Semifinal games are over, and then they're like, okay, we're going downstate, we're going to Champaign, here's what we're going to do. And we kind of have these long days of coach calls, so they give us a lot of info. We're always looking at the Trib and the Sun Times and reading articles about these schools and just kind of doing our research on our own as well. So it's good. And I like telling those stories that are, I like the X's and O's stories for sure, and the game plan stories, but I always want to get to the heart of the team, tell feature stories, what the kids are doing, anything they've overcome, anything the community has been through and overcome. So I really enjoy being that sideline presence and kind of getting to the heart of these teams.
What do you guys cover, like the playoff games, or is it just the state title?
We do playoff games as well. So Marquee Sports Network is the network here that I've done some playoff games for, and also WCIU. So, covering quarterfinal, semifinal games, and then super sectional for basketball, and then the state tournament and everything too.
Oh yeah. It's awesome that it's at U of I now, though.
Yes, it was cool at Champaign for sure for football, but I think it's a good thing that it's at U of I, or I'm sorry, Illinois State as well. Last
Mhm.
year, Illinois State, because it's a little bit smaller, and so it feels bigger for football. Basketball, obviously, still in Champaign, where the Illini play, which is cool too. So it's great. I love it, and it's always something where I miss Thanksgiving for football
Yeah,
season.
yeah.
And I don't mind. My mom's like, go do what you do, go make your money, go cover these athletes, and they send me photos from the Thanksgiving dinner table, and it's one of those sacrifices that you make in sports, but it's worth it.
Oh yeah, coaching basketball, we got Thanksgiving tournament, so I have Thanksgiving Day off, and the rest of it is Christmas too.
You get it, right?
Oh,
So
I get it.
yeah, but it's great, and that's part of the job. And so when young students or young broadcasters come to me and say, I want to be a sideline reporter, I straight up tell them, like, these are the kind of sacrifices you're going to have to make. Nobody hands you a script and says, here, go look pretty and do this. You have to be doing your research. You miss things. You got to travel. You miss bachelorette parties and birthdays and weddings, and you kind of have to pick and choose what you go to.
Right. Now, I think you did work for CHGO as well. I don't know if you still do things with them or.
Yeah, I was with them for 2 years. My contract ended in February, so it was a great experience. So I love everybody that I worked with there, and I wish them nothing but the best. But I've moved on to some other freelance opportunities with the PGA and other things. So, but love them. They're still down the street from me. I've made some of my great friends through working there, and it was really cool to help start a network from the ground up and help build them kind of from scratch. And they're doing really well. Their Bears show is a hit. It's one of the most successful shows within the whole All City network. And I can't say enough good things about what they're doing in Chicago.
Yeah, I've only had Braggs on and Cody on.
Oh, that's awesome. They're both great. Braggs is a riot, right? And I mean, just his story is so cool too, because he was a bricklayer, and I know he told you that. You don't have to hear that from me, but what I love about him is he worked hard and he made his dream happen, and I can relate to that. And Cody too. Cody went to EIU, and he had non-traditional path as well, and he covers the Cubs so well. But the funny story about Braggs is he asked me one day, like when he started producing for CHGO and doing more stuff with on-air stuff, he asked me how to turn on the MacBook computer. And I had to show him where the button was. And like we laughed about it, but it was also this really sweet moment where I was like, oh my God, this guy didn't know how to turn on a computer, and now look at all this cool shit he's doing. Excuse me language. But like he is just an inspiration, and I'm so proud of him and just what he's done for that show. And same thing with Cody and Luke and Ryan and those guys on the Cubs show. Like, they're just so dedicated.
No, me and Cody were at Eastern at the same time.
Okay.
Didn't even know it. Didn't even know it.
Oh my gosh.
Because he was telling me something about like 2010 or 11, and down there I was like, wait a minute. That's when I was there.
Yeah.
And he's like, so we probably crossed paths and didn't even know it. And I was like, yeah, we sure did.
He's a proud alum, and Cody's great. He and I went out for like Cubs opening day a few times and did some fun videos. And they're just funny. They're just funny guys.
Yeah. I don't agree with a lot of takes that other people have, but those are my two favorite. That's my opinion, and that's it.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes some of the shows are polarizing for fans, right? Like you either love them or you totally disagree with them.
Yeah, it's more disagreeing with me. How do you keep up with all the sports? Because I have a hard time enough keeping up with like the Bears and the Illini and this and that. Like, where do you store all that in your brain? Like, how do you keep up with all the information? And then when you go talk about it or report it, how do you keep it all in line?
It's hard. I think some people think we always know everything, and we don't, right? Like, like, did I watch every NHL Stanley Cup playoff game? No, I didn't. I watched Game 7 though yesterday, but there are other things going on. I'm watching the College World Series. I'm paying attention to Cubs baseball. I'm paying attention to other things, and especially when I'm working. Like I just covered a month ago the BigEast baseball tournament. I'm locked in on those teams. I'm paying attention to what UConn's doing, what St. John's is doing, what Xavier's doing, and that's my focus. But that doesn't mean I don't try to stay in the know and read, daily news on what's going on in sports. I'll watch ESPN and get up in the morning and just try to at least have a general knowledge. I was actually just talking with a girlfriend about this who works in local media here, and Chicago sports, and she was like, it's so tough to keep up. You got 2 baseball teams, you got Bears, things starting. We just finished hockey. We have the draft for the Bulls and all this stuff. And it's like, how do you juggle it all? And it's really tough. And I don't know that I have a solution, but I just try to read up on it in the morning, sit with my coffee, check Twitter, pay attention to what people are talking about. But it's tough. Sometimes you just want to, watch a Netflix show and unplug from it all.
Right. Because because this podcast is a hodgepodge. It's talking to high school coaches, college coaches,
Yeah.
but I have a segment for the Bears. Like a buddy of mine he works for FS1 in Arizona and works on make sure the commercials go and stuff.
Yeah.
Big Bears fan, so he comes on and talks.
Cool.
I do my own Illini thing by myself, and I think about it. I'm like, I have to watch every game and understand everything that happened and then talk about it. But then, what if you miss the game? Now you got to try to figure out what actually happened, and then you're trying to sound smart, and you're trying to sound like you know it, and then the hateful comments come in about how you don't know nothing.
Yeah, right. You're not going to always hit it out of the park, and that's why I think people need to give people some grace on the internet, especially Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days. I think it's really important that we're just kind to each other.
Oh yeah, like already I've had a lot of videos on here about Caitlin Clark, and every day I wake up and there's 10 more comments. And
how about that discourse? I've talked to people that still work at CHGO, and they're like, our Sky stuff is just out of control. You have hateful comments. You have people that make it political. It's just,
oh yeah, I got called like a racist bigot on a comment, and I looked at it and I said, why? And I'm looking at it because I'm not a big time show. CHGO blows me out of the water, but I like doing it. But I see those and I go, because those videos blow up, and so I'm going to talk about it. But I see those comments and I'm like, are they to say I don't know what I'm talking about? And I'm like, then educate me. Then I'd rather have a conversation about like, okay, what was I wrong about? Let me know what I did wrong.
And that's what you're doing right, and that's great. I sometimes I ignore the people that are commenting on my personal stuff when they don't know. But I try to keep it simple, especially because a lot of what I do is college and high school sports anyway. Right now.
I've now just typed the word bozo under each comment. I saw Dave Portnoy do it, so I started doing it.
There you go. That's a good plan.
I just put bozo. Unless it's an educated one of like,
right. Then
did you not see this game from Angel Reese? And then I have to comment like, okay, this game happened after I recorded this and all this stuff. Then they'll comment back and be like, okay, I understand and whatever. Then people will say like, you're racist or you don't know anything and this and that. And I'm like, why?
And I mean, you probably talked to Cody and Braggs about that too. Like they get hate on social media a lot because they're on it so much.
Oh yeah, Cody loves it though. Like Cody's my inspiration of like how to stir the pot when we were talking about it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take your suggestion.
We control and deal with the trolls all day. But sometimes people cross the line and they bring families into it, or just hateful, horrible stuff. So it's tough.
Oh, it's super tough. I'm going to stop reading them, but it's hard when you check your email and it says comment on this or comment on this, and you read it, and you're like, whatever,
Yeah.
The best ones when you talk about coaching and stuff, they'll come back and say like, "Thank God these kids don't play for you" and stuff like that. And I have to respond with like, "Have you ever coached a day in your life? Have you ever broadcasted a day in your life? Have you ever done this?" And the answer is no.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I have people that have said in the past, like, "Oh, you're not that good at broadcasting. You're just doing it for this and that." And I'm like, I want to be like, here's my mic. You go do it then. You know what I mean? Like, we're all trying to figure it out. And I really think that it's important to be kind and lift other people up, especially other women in the industry, the guys that are supportive. We see that, and that doesn't go unnoticed. So I think for me, it's just, I try to limit my social media time. I know it's important to promote your work and to be in the know, but you have to try to limit it too.
But I also respect what you said when like you're going to say like your opinion or your thought, but you're going to try to say in a way where you're not trying to say this is what the way it is, or then I know you work for them, but there's other people out there that have their talk shows on those big networks. The way they broadcast is that they know it and you don't know it. And so I think we're getting away from the way you're trying to do it, and they're going a different direction.
Sure.
And that's why I miss the like that type of broadcasting or reporting of like, this is what we have. We could be wrong, and if
Right.
we're wrong, we're going to say we're wrong or whatever. But I like that genuinosity of like
Yeah.
the human being part of it because we're all wrong.
Yeah.
Like I guarantee in the 20 minutes we've talked, I've said something that's wrong, but that's okay.
Right. Right. It's okay to admit that we're not perfect. If we were perfect, we would all have the top job at ESPN or whatever. So I
Oh
don't
yeah.
know.
I'm starting to get into that realm of saying like, well, you've never done this. How can you say this? And I took a step back, I think yesterday, and I said, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's the human element of like we get caught up in it. Then you take a step back and say, okay, I don't need to be caught up in
Yeah,
the, and it's hard.
it
Social media
is.
is hard. And,
It is.
and, but I do respect that you said that and especially I think what might help you out is the high school part too. Like you're able to kind of scale it back a little bit and do the high school and then do the college. And
Yeah, I mean, I'm here to celebrate the athletes that I cover, and I'm not going to skirt around anything bad that happens. But at the end of the day, it's high school football, it's high school basketball. We want to celebrate these kids. And when it
right,
comes to college, if we need to talk about something serious, we will. But also, it's about the moment. And usually, I cover conference championships for softball, baseball, field hockey, basketball. So you got to stay in the moment of the game.
right. How do you handle, have you ever had like like a coach or player that was like heated and mad and you're trying to ask questions like I've never understood, like I would be like mad or like be like, oh, sorry.
Mhm.
Like,
No, for the most part, everyone's been super respectful to me, knock on wood. They understand that I'm trying to do my job. Um, I haven't had an issue like that. Like I know, like I think it was Nick Saban who like yelled at somebody once, and
mhm,
you have some coaches who are like, "I'm not going to talk about that," and you see it in press conferences, and it's happened to my friends. But for the most part, I have so far been okay. And not
Chicago is a tough place to do that.
It really is. And there's a lot of people on these beats that are just negative. And
Yeah.
so I try to come in with a positive attitude when I'm covering Bears or Bulls or Cubs and White Sox, even though they're not having great years. Um, and just be respectful of the PR people and the people that are trying to do their jobs too, because, it's Chicago is such a tough, competitive market. And there's a lot of negativity around these teams. Now, there's a new spirit, new era for the Bears, so there's some excitement. People are happy again. We'll see. I'm excited. But
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like the minute things start to go south, everybody's negative and it's just a mess.
Oh, trust me, like I said, grew up in Central Illinois. We don't like Chicago. Like when you live in Central Illinois, you want nothing to do with Chicago besides sports. And I know like when all the sports are doing well, it's bumping. When they're doing bad,
Right.
everything is burned down the city.
Negative, burn down the city, it's over. Yeah. It's so hot and cold.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts on the Chicago Bears stadium situation? Because I just saw yesterday or today they're back to Arlington Heights.
I know. Mark Harmon at CHGO is who I saw report that. It's very interesting. I am for the new stadium in Arlington Heights. Do I think or downtown? Like, do I think it needs to be downtown? Yeah, I would love that. But you look at Soldier Field now, and it's really not a great situation.
No.
It's super outdated. We know this. Parking in and out is hell.
Hmm.
Getting in and out, walking is difficult.
Oh,
It's a nightmare for concerts. It's a nightmare for everything. And if they get this state-of-the-art stadium, they can host Big Ten tournaments, and they
yep.
can host big concerts, and they can host special events, and maybe big Chicago Sky Fever games. Like that's what this city needs. We need to be competitive and in the same realm as the Viking Stadium and these
Mhm.
state-of-the-art places. And it's time. Soldier Field is so old, and I'm ready for those plans to move forward.
Yep. I can't agree more. I was super excited about the Arlington Heights thing because I live in
Mhm.
Naperville and it's closer, so I'm like I can get
Yep,
there better. But then when they showed that new one in the city, I was like, that looks awesome. It's
it does.
cool.
Yeah.
Now they're back to Arlington Heights, and I'm like, just make a decision
Yep.
and stick with it.
Because it's gonna take a long time, right? It's not gonna be done for years. So
Right.
let's get moving on it. I don't know what the logistics are to get that approved, but I know Kevin Warren is doing a great job with the Bears, trying to push that forward with the mayor and with the city. So I'm ready.
I'll keep my Kevin Warren comments to myself. during his Big Ten commissioner.
Yes. Okay.
But
well, if the Bears have a good year, will you change your mind about him?
oh yeah, I have a buddy, my best friend growing up. He really will. If he was on here right now, he would blast Kevin Moore until the cows came home. He'll never change. He's like, I'm not going to be a Bears fan anymore when they hired him. And I was like, well, I said, but he's not in charge. Like, let's just, if his job is to do all that stuff, just let him.
Yeah.
That's why I'm okay with it. I'm like, you know what? He did the Viking Stadium. If he's going to get this done, lets his general manager and stuff do whatever. Let him do it.
He's been really, from a media standpoint, he's been really gracious with the media, with his time, really transparent. And that's all I can say about that, is that I can see it from that side, and I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, no, from the outside looking in, it's like you're doing a better job with this thing, but whatever. Right. I don't know what really happened in the Big Ten. It was the COVID times, and it was
weird times for sure.
We were all up in arms,
right?
So I'll just keep those.
Sure.
Not gonna get anybody in trouble or myself,
right?
But no, he's doing fine. I'm not, it's whatever. I just, we'll leave it at that. Did you still? I asked the Bears thing because you still cover the Bears and still like have some insight on the Bears? Or anything?
I haven't lately, but I hope to in the future, and I still pay attention. So I love the Rome Odunze pick. I'm on board for Caleb Williams. I'm excited about this receiving core and what they're able to do this year. And just the energy, the hype around this team now is exciting. Like even Caleb Williams, like doing the bear claw and like making that a thing. We need that. This city needs that. And I do feel bad for Justin Fields. I'm from Ohio. I was a Buckeye fan. So like,
oh God,
I know, right? God. Yeah, here we go. Here we go. We didn't talk about this pre-show. And so I feel bad. I feel like, he wasn't set up for success, and there was a lot of things, moving parts, and he also struggled. That goes without saying. He struggled too. So I know that's kind of like a chalky answer, but I'm excited for what's to come moving forward. I hope that the pieces are all in place now and the Bears have the year that they wanted to have last year.
Oh, yeah, no, I have a lot of Justin Fields episodes on this YouTube channel and podcast, and I did not want to pick him. I said it from day one. I was like, do not pick Justin Fields.
You were against it.
I was against it.
Were you on board for Caleb Williams?
Yes and no.
Okay, why?
I said no because I was questioning leadership stuff and talking to some college coaches that I know, and I won't say who they are. That was like a question mark for him about like leadership stuff. Like there were sometimes it made it look like it was about himself and everything else. Mm-hmm. But then they said what can overshadow some of that is he's competitive. He is a good player. He does have a good arm. And the only reason why it was this year. Now, if he would have went last year, there was no question, but then like this year kind of showed some of itself.
Right.
And then how he was conducting himself with the media, like during his college year. But then like after he was done and he was doing interviews, he did like a 360 of like how he was, his comments and how he was doing things. So as it was going on, I started to say, okay, I could see how this will work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with the new offensive coordinator coming in, the way he wants to run his offense, I watched some of the Seahawks film. I'm like, okay, I think he can fit in better. So now I'm on board with it. But there was a moment there where I was like, at one point I was like, JJ McCarthy, man, just go get him.
That's what he wanted, really?
Just because I was thinking about it. I'm like, he runs a similar pro style offense. He didn't do the air raid offense. He's whatever. But I knew it was going to be Caleb Williams. I went back and watched it, and I was like, you know what? He's a better passer than Justin Fields, I think, from college perspective and everything else. I'm okay with it. And then I am now on board.
Right.
It's cool.
Yeah. I'm excited. I think I trust Ryan Poles, and, I hope that Eberflus and Waldron kind of have a simpatico situation this year. We'll see. Yeah. I think we'll know after week 1.
Oh, we will. Yeah.
We'll know.
I was not Justin Fields, so I said whatever anybody else.
Yeah.
Because I predicted what was going to happen, and it happened.
It's disappointing, right? When you see that and you see the way that they lost to the Packers and just the hype, and then it just kind of spiraled out. So.
Yeah, because you're an Ohio State fan, so you watched it. I'm a Big Ten fan, so I watched him. Mm-hmm. And I tried to say that he's not an NFL win quarterback. Except for I thought he'd be in a good situation to sit behind somebody and then figure it out. So like if he was sat behind Russell Wilson for 3 years, he would be really good. But when he gets thrown into the fire, he's a run first person.
Yeah.
Ohio State runs a lot of play action RPO stuff. He had 2 running backs that averaged 150 yards a game. I looked at this, like 120 yards a game. He had a number 1 wide receiver. And so I'm not going to get on the Justin Fields thing because I think he's super athletic. I think he's a good football player. I just don't know if like what he's asked to do in the NFL was going to work when he's thrown into the fire.
Yeah.
So maybe here in 2 years, it clicks.
Yeah. You hope he has success in Pittsburgh, right? I mean, I want him to fit in somewhere for sure.
Yeah, that was my whole opinion. But again, social media blew it up, and then it talks about this,
It's one of the most polarizing topics. I mean, at CHGO, we were split down the middle. It was like half people were like, Justin Fields all day, forever, and the other people were like, get rid of him. So anything we did on him and any content we did on the question between the two of them, it always blew up, and people had a lot of opinions.
I had a lot of opinions, but I also tried to say like, but I hope it's well because I'm a Bears fan. So you kind of have to hope that, especially this year, I was like, it has to click this year. And what I like about Caleb Williams is, from the reports I saw, it won't be any worse this first year because
that's the hope. More wins this year. I grew up a Browns fan. Like I said, I'm from Ohio, so I know this quarterback struggle all too well.
Oh, well, yeah, but Bears, we've gone through a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree. But yeah. So
I miss Jay Cutler. I tell people all the time. People wanted him out for a long time. But then when Justin Fields was struggling, I started to see more and more about how they missed Jay Cutler. And I said, oh, I was a Jay Cutler guy. Like, now we want to come back. And I'm like, Bragg said that too. Like Bragg's was the reason why my Justin Fields takes kind of scaled back, because the way he explained it to me on that episode and the way his thought process worked, and I started to think about it. And I'm like, I understand the way you think and bringing me back down to earth a little bit. And and it really helped my thinking process. But I also look at things from a coach perspective and watching it from a scheme perspective. And I'm like, it's not working.
Sure. That makes sense.
And I break it down because the sacks he took, people blame the O-line. And I look at the film and I'm like, some of this is on you, Justin Fields. It's not on the O-line. And the O-line was actually ranked top 10. I'm like, okay, this is not. And then also, Eberflus is on the hot seat, I think. So if they don't,
this year is, people thought we were gonna not have him this season. So the decision to keep him was definitely a surprise to a lot of Bears fans.
I was surprised. I was real surprised. But him calling defense saved his job. I don't know if you guys heard that. I did. I was like, you calling defense saved your job.
Yep, I agree.
And that's why he's keeping it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy to think it's almost that time again. I feel like we just finished all that and we just kind of got over it, and it's back in a month. So
I don't mean to stay on the Bears things or get you to say something, but like Bears Twitter had become like one of the most toxic places.
Oh, I know.
As it came out, it kept going.
Just from working at CHGO and experiencing it, a dangerous place. It really was a scary place, and I got to the point where we stopped even reading the comments on our pages because it got ugly.
Oh, it was bad. And then I would hop on to see what they were saying to those guys. And I'm looking at them like, some of it made sense. And some of it, again, was just like, what are you talking about at all?
Half of them are bots, too. You can't read the comments, Steve.
I'm not. During this talk, some person's commenting left and right about UFL, and I'm like, I'm not talking about spring football. Because I can't, again, that's just something else I'd have to keep up with.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So when you're getting ready for
in the fall,
Yeah, like you're getting ready for the draft for like NBA, like how you're going to know way more than me. Like, how can you even remember all these players and talk about them? Like, it's that to me, that would take like a master's degree research type of thing to really.
Yeah. Well, I can put it in this way. Like when I study for the state finals or a conference championship, I mean, that's like when I do football, it's 8 teams.
Mhm.
And it's like, I think it was 4 games a day for basketball. It was even more than that. And they changed the format this year, but it's a lot to remember. It is a
Yeah.
lot to remember and keep track of, and you want to get coaches' names right and OCs right and DCs right, and you want to make sure kind of each individual story. So pretty much from the day we do the coaches calls and there's all that happening, I am just knee deep in prep, and I
Yep.
have notes. I have tabs like on my computer for each team, for each call. I have everything recorded so I can go back and listen to it. And I just kind of make decisions based on like, okay, for this matchup, what am I going to open up with? What's going to be my opening story? And then I have some supplemental stories. Say, if this happens, we'll talk about this. If this happens, we'll talk about this. And sometimes you prep for hours and the game goes an entirely different direction, and all that stuff you had prepared is out the window because, the team you thought was going to just annihilate the other team ends up, making things interesting, and it's a barn burner. And so then you have these other storylines that come into play. So you have your pre-existing storylines and then your in-game storylines, the stuff that's happening in the moment that you want to cover, or the injuries you want to talk about. And so you could prep for hours and then actually never get a great story in because the game goes a different direction. And then it's kind of, you got to read the room. So it's fun. It's challenging. I love doing it. It just lights me up when that red light goes on and we're live. And it's just, I get nervous every time still, even though I've done it for 6 years now, I still get nervous. I still get excited. But yeah, it's definitely hard to keep up with everything. There's days where I don't. And you just try to prepare. I learned from talent coaches and mentors I've had over the years that preparation is everything.
Mhm.
If you're prepared and you can talk off the cuff about something, even if something's going on behind you or someone's, yelling in your face during your broadcast or the audio's cutting in and out, like once you're live, you're live. You don't get to redo it again. So it's challenging, but it's so much fun.
I was gonna say, like, how many times you have to go off the cuff if something does like changes, like
Yeah.
to be prepared to go off the cuff and like off script, sort of to say like you have to be knowledgeable to go off the script.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I was just talking to one of my producers last year during basketball season, games at UIC. It was a super sectional game. We were supposed to do an interview with an athletic director, and he didn't show up right away. He was like talking to someone else, and we were about to go on. And this happened to be the game where we were honoring one of our coworkers who had passed away. His name was Mark Kruger, and he was a longtime, reporter, play-by-play guy, and he passed away unexpectedly last year. So this was the game we did a moment of silence for him. And, I'm paying attention to the game, but I'm also trying to get this interview, and the interview's not coming. And the producer's in my ear going, Kacy, we got to go on in 10 seconds. And he's like, you're going to have to talk about something. It's halftime. Yeah. We're going to talk about something. And I'm just like, what do you mean? What do you want me to talk about? Like, I'm panicking.
Yeah.
But the red light went on, and I just said, welcome back on WCIU. I'd like to talk for a minute about my friend Mark Kruger, who passed away. And I just kind of had my moment to, kind of give my 2 cents about Mark and speak on the impact that he had on me. So sometimes you got to improv and just like make it happen and fill 2 minutes of time. And it was nerve-wracking, but I'm really happy it happened because it made me better. It made me learn how to think on the fly, how to come up with something quickly, how to pivot. And yeah, it was a growing moment for me.
This might be a dumb question. What is something about, because sideline reporting, you got your camera and everything else, but when you're actually on like a show, you've been on a show with like a desk and you're doing a show, what's something that maybe we don't know that goes on because we just look at it and go, we can do that job because we're talking sports. But like, what's something maybe we all don't understand about the TV world and everything?
It's challenging because what you do is I'm wearing an earpiece during the games. And so I have a producer in my ear talking, and I have the play-by-play and analyst also in my ear talking. And sometimes you're talking while someone else is talking, and you're trying to listen to your interviewer. You're trying to listen to the coach that's telling you about, that play on 3rd and long or whatever. But you also have the producer in your ear saying, hey, you got 15 seconds, or hey, do this, do that, or whatever. And so it's really hard to be able to be in the moment with that coach or that player and also do what's next and know what's coming up. And I think when you're hosting a show, it's a whole different muscle because not only are you navigating different personalities that are giving takes and interesting, tidbits, but you're the ship steerer. You're the captain, and you have to pivot and go, okay, we got 20 seconds before break. What's your comment on this? And you have to kind of transition in and out of different topics and make it run smoothly. And it is challenging, and people forget that. And people who know sports, it's easy to talk sports, but can you talk sports on camera while also looking at the right camera? Because there's 4 different cameras passing around you at different times. Yeah. And you got to know which one to look at and which one we're doing next and what's behind you. So it's just like sensory overload sometimes. And so what I did to challenge myself to like be able to handle that stuff is I would try to do my reports at home, like in front of my mirror, with like loud music on in the background.
Okay. Yeah.
To try to challenge myself to shut out the noise around me and be one with my audience.
Right.
Like I'm sitting having a drink with them. And how would I give this information if I'm sitting down with you having a beer?
Right.
You don't want to sound super rehearsed. You don't want to sound like you're reading. You don't want to sound robotic, because then people are going to be like, what is she doing? So it's this art of being comfortable, conversational, charming, and all these different things that you're trying to be while blocking out whatever's happening behind you. Because sometimes you have student sections right behind you screaming in your face, or you have a fan that walks in front of the camera. It's live. It's unexpected. So I think that's something that people don't always realize. And a lot of reporters get made fun of. They're like, oh, she's so dumb. Look what happened here. She forgot what she was going to say. And it's like, I cut people some slack because it is a hard job.
Right. That happened to me already today, talking to you. Like, what was I going to say? And it's live. Like, this is nowhere near what you do, but it is.
No, it is. You're doing it. And that's the thing. It's like sometimes you lose your train of thought and you're like blanking and you don't want it to show on your face.
That happened with the coach I just had on right before you. Literally about 4 times I said, well, because he said something, then my mind thinks of that. Then I'm like, what was I going to say?
Yeah.
And
because you're trying to listen to me, which is a skill. And then you're also trying to think of your next question.
Yeah, that's why.
If you ask me something that I just answered, then you know what I mean? So it's tough, and you're doing it too.
This used to be scripted. I'd have to research the high school coach, the college coach, and I would have questions. But since it's a podcast, it's way different than what you guys do.
Yeah.
Which beyond CHGO, it's a podcast. You have topics, but it can go off the rails. And
it did when I was there.
Like it could be talking about something else, and so I stopped scripting it, and I'm like, just be a human being and talk. And if you think of something, that's why this is Joe Rogan. I am the sports Joe Rogan, because
I love that. Yeah, and this is more comfortable for your guests too.
Right.
And people can tell when it feels scripted, and so it's cool that it's like I said, you're having a beer with them and sitting, just talking.
The shirt I'm wearing, he's a high school coach in Florida, has his own YouTube channel. It's huge. He does a whiteboard and does every day. It's just a whiteboard. He does it in school so you can hear the bell ringing when it's next class.
Cool.
He doesn't edit it. He just puts it up.
Yeah.
I had him on during the COVID times, and he was my first one I didn't do a script with. So I asked him, and he goes, "The fuck, you do a script?" And I was like, I don't know how to do podcasting. I just jumped into it and did it. And he was like, don't script it. He's like, you can have pre-thoughts in your head, obviously, if it's a college coach or something like that.
Right. But yeah,
talk.
You can miss out on really good stuff if you stick to the script and you don't let some natural things happen. You know what I mean? So I always try to come in, even with my games, like with the skeleton and with notes. But like I said, sometimes it goes in a whole different direction, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. And again, another dumb question.
No.
A lot of sports broadcasts and interviews, when we watch, it's like the same questions all the time, which is obvious. You have to ask those questions. Do you try to come up with like unique questions or like stuff like that to keep it?
Always. I never want to always be the one that asks, how does this feel? What does this mean to you? Because who's going to say it sucks? Doesn't mean anything to me. So I try to avoid the obvious questions. I try to avoid it's hard. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes the moment does call for, hey, how does this feel? You just won a state championship.
Right.
Right now. Because that's when you get some emotion out of them, right? But I try to be a little more original, and I've been trained to ask more of the who, what, when, where, why, how, instead of just like, how do you feel right now? What does this mean to you? how special is this? Because they're never going to say, it's not that special.
Right.
You know? So I try to be more thoughtful about like your first question is something about the game. Your second question might be a follow-up to how they answered. If coach at halftime is like, yeah, we got to fix some things in the second half. And you're a coach. People like to give me coach speak and they like to be generic. And I say, coach, what things are you going to fix? What defensive changes are you going to make? I'm trying to pull more out of these people, because if they just say, yeah, we're going to make some changes, we had a bad half.
Yeah.
You didn't learn anything from that.
Right.
So I try to be thoughtful about a certain play. I'll pick on a certain play and say, in the third quarter, you did this. Why? Something that's a little bit more interesting or a little bit more detailed. I try to be more detailed. And then your last question could be of the moment. If it's the end of the game, what will you cherish most about this moment? What's the highlight from the season? What has this team done for you? Because I learned a hard lesson last fall. I interviewed Tim Rackey when Nazareth won their title game. And I'm trying to think of what I asked him specifically, but I said, he got emotional and I asked him about his emotions. And he said, this team taught me more than I taught them this year. And I went into my next question because I had something pre-planned in my head.
Yeah.
But the obvious question I should have asked, and this is a learning moment for me, is, what did they teach you, coach?
Right.
But I didn't ask that. And I regret it to this day because I watch my stuff back and I go, Kacy, bozo, like bozo.
Yeah. There you go. Bozo.
Yeah. I was like, that was the obvious question. And I learned a lesson there going, listen to what they're saying, because you might be able to build another question off what they're saying. But it's a lot in the moment, right? You're trying to get it out fast. You're trying to hurry up. You're trying to listen to what they're saying and listen to your producer. And so, like I said, not always perfect, but I try to pick up on those cues. When he said, yeah, they taught me more than I taught them, I should have said, coach, what did they teach you?
My experience is not the same, but it was like, if I had like 8 questions, because I researched the coach, let's say we get to the third question, it's good flowing. Then they say something I find interesting and I want to talk more about it, and we do, but then I'm like, well, then how do I get back to this? Or I just ignore it and I go to this.
Yeah.
And then I realized after I talked to that coach and I did it, I was like, screw it. We don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Unless it's like with you, I had to ask broadcasting questions, but I don't have anything written down. It's in my head. And
right. And that's fun. Like, it should just be a conversation, because people are going to pay attention if it's something they can relate to or it feels natural.
Right. But I'm also a coach. I coaches 3 sports, so my mind will go 100 miles an hour. And that's why I go, what was I going to say?
All good.
Because I do football, basketball, and softball. So I do
all of it. Love it. I love softball. Softball is the sport that gave me my first start in the business, really.
Oh, it was my first year doing softball. I did baseball the last 2 years.
Very cool.
Did softball, and people are like, how did you switch to coach girls? And I said, well, girls, this is how I describe it to young people. Boys are, what have you done for me lately type of people. The girls want to get better. And when they get mad, it's not at you, it's how they're performing, and the guys will blame me. And so they're like, well, how's softball going? And I'm like, I'm so relaxed and it's so easy going.
Yeah.
Football and basketball is such a different animal. And I've been doing it for 15 years. And so I'm an old man now from doing it for so long.
That's good.
Because you talk about how you covered Eastern Illinois, which is awesome, because that's where I went. Because I walked on there for my first year, got my ass kicked. And I said, this is not for me. And started coaching right away. I was 18, 19 years old. It was just go. And shout out to Eastern, because they have so many historic things about them.
God. It was so fun to cover their games, and I'll be doing more this football season too. And they've got Illinois and Northwestern, which should be exciting.
And I'm an Illinois fan, so when I was talking to Coach last time, he saw the Illinois thing behind me, and he goes, that's a lot of orange. And I said, I got blue.
It's in there. They're both in there.
And he goes, and then I said, I'm just not going to watch the game because I don't know who to root for.
Oh, you're an alum, right? You got to root for Eastern.
I know, but when you grow up from birth as an Illinois,
I get it. And that's people ask me that because I grew up a Cleveland Indians fan, now Guardians. And people are like, well, how are you a Cubs fan now? Because of 2016. And I'm like, listen, I'm just rooting for good baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I cover so many sports that it's hard to be a fan sometimes because you're just watching games a lot. So for me, when I was a fan of Cleveland, and I
Mm-hmm.
still am, but I couldn't move to Chicago and pick another AL Central team to root for. So I had to pick the Cubs for my
That's
baseball.
true.
It
Yeah.
was tough.
When did you move to Chicago?
2018, 2 years
Oh,
after.
okay. So it was after the World Series.
It was
Okay.
after. And so for me, that 2016 was heartbreaking. My whole family, we grew up Cleveland sports fans. Like watching the Tribe was like our thing. And, and now we obviously still love watching the Guardians. It's still a part of our family and part of our tradition. But moving to Chicago, I've gone to a lot of Cubs games. I've covered Cubs, players and just I've covered Patrick Wisdom. I've interviewed Javi Baez when he was a Cub.
Yeah.
So it was hard. People are like, "What? You're a traitor." I'm like, "No, I'm just a reporter."
I've been a Cubs fan my whole life,
Mhm.
and it's been rough until that time.
Yeah, I
I
bet
think.
it was awesome for you.
Oh, I stayed up the whole time.
I bet.
I tell people this story. Like I watched the beginning of the playoffs; they were losing, so I stopped watching. I just kept up with the scores, and we started
Mhm.
winning. So I said, I'm not allowed to watch the rest of the playoffs. When it was Game 7, I was keeping track of it. I said, screw it. I'm never going to see this again. Put it on the TV.
Sure.
And that's when we started to lose it. And I'm like, I'm to blame. Then the rain delay happened, and I'm
I
like,
turned it off right before Rajay Davis and all that. I missed like that because I was like, I'm done.
oh, I stayed up for the whole thing. And
Oh man.
when Chris Bryant got the ball and he went to throw it to first, he was slipping, and people can see. I thought he's going to overthrow it. We're going to lose, and it's my fault. And then we won. I literally had like a tear come out because I was like,
Sure.
and then they're in Charleston. It's a small town, There's that there's a Hibbett Sports.
Mm-hmm.
One of my buddies worked there. He texted me saying they were closed. He said we're reopening in 2 hours to sell the stuff.
That's so cool.
So I drove there and waited. I sat in the parking lot until they opened, and I ran in there and bought like a shirt and a hoodie because I was
That's
like,
awesome. That's so great. And so that's why I love sports in general. And people are like, why, how could you root for the Cubs? I'm like, you know what? If any team was going to beat Cleveland that year, it should have been the Cubs. And I'm glad because they had a huge drought. Now Cleveland has the longest drought. So I'm okay with it. I'm at peace with it. And the Guardians are having a really good year. Cubs
yes, they are.
So
Yes, they are. The Cubs haven't been the same since.
yeah. Well, 2017 still looked.
It looked
Okay.
promising.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of pieces leaving. And
Cleveland did the same thing after we lost Lindor. They won 22 games straight in the 2017 season. Just fell apart.
Oh, yeah. And the Cubs are trying to rebuild it now, but the owner makes weird financial decisions and new general manager and everything else. And it's kind of, we're going to go back to another drought. That's what's about to happen. And
yeah, tough time for baseball in Chicago. That's for sure.
oh, yeah. And especially because from Central Illinois, it's split. It's either you're a Cubs fan or you're a Cardinal fan.
Oh, that's
it's
right.
so close to Missouri.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
And so, especially when you go to Charleston, Charleston is filled with Chicago suburb people that go to Eastern.
Right.
So it's White Sox, Cubs, but then you're closer to Missouri now going south. So it's a lot of Cardinals.
Yeah.
The amount of arguments I've had with Cardinal fans. Because of Cardinal fans, I became a Red Sox fan because they beat them twice in the World Series. And so I became like a Red Sox because I hated the White Sox growing up. So I had to pick, as a kid, you're opposite. So you like the Cubs and the Red Sox because it's not the White Sox.
There you go.
You're 8 years old and you're like, I'm going to pick that one.
Isn't it funny how we pick our fandom? Like for me, when the Cavs won the national championship, it was the best day of my life. Like you said, you shed a tear for the Cubs in 2016. When the Cavs won, I felt like it was Christmas.
Yeah.
It was just so exciting.
So wait, you're an Ohio State fan and LeBron fan? I'll back it up a second.
Wait a minute. Okay. I grew up in Ohio. So I always was like into Cleveland sports. It was Cavs, it was Browns, it was Cleveland baseball. And that's just kind of how I was raised because my dad was a big fan of all those teams. And that's what we did. We watched with my brother and my dad. I'd watch those games. And that's how I kind of fell in love with sports in general. And now that I live in Chicago and I worked for CHGO and I am here and I care about these teams here, and
Right.
that's okay. And people from Ohio still call me a traitor, but whatever.
Well, I was born and raised to hate Ohio State and hate Indiana. That's who, and Michigan,
That's fair.
which I don't hate Michigan. I hate Michigan basketball. I don't hate their football team.
Sure.
I hate Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, look, I grew up an Ohio State fan. I thought I wanted to go to Ohio State. I didn't. I'm okay with that. And so I'm not as big of an Ohio State fan as I used to be. Um,
I respect them.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, for sure. Ryan
For
Day's an amazing coach.
Mm-hmm.
They get great players. But I think it started with 2004 and 5 Illinois basketball, and they went to the championship game.
Okay.
Ohio State beat them in the regular season to like end their undefeated season.
Mm-hmm. And
you're young, I'm a freshman or eighth grade in high school or eighth grade. And I'm like, you're told then in that moment as a kid, like, we hate them. And you have to be like, okay. The older I get, though, I don't hate them. I respect them.
Yeah.
I'm not like a Michigan person that says they're Ohio. I say Ohio State.
Sure.
And, as a fan, but then now that I do the podcast world, I like everybody. So like, if a Ohio State coach comes on here, I'm gonna be all giddy.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's how I feel as a reporter, just in general. If I'm working for Big East or Big Ten or wherever I am working ever in the future, I'm just covering the games. I'm rooting for a good game, and so people hate that answer, but that's how it is.
Oh, it's the truth. People hate the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I've taken a lot of your time. I appreciate you coming on here, giving some insight to the broadcast stuff.
Yeah.
And everything. I appreciate you spending time.
Absolutely. It's been fun. And I love I was going to say, I love your set. I didn't tell you that. I've been looking at all what are those?
It's a mess, but yeah.
What are they called? Pop figures?
The Fungo Pop thing.
Fungo Pop. Those are awesome. And I love your helmets. The Biddy helmets are great. They're bringing me back to my brother's room growing up. And my dad's a big sports collectible guy. So he loves going to the National Card Collectors Convention at Rosemont every year when it's in Rosemont. This year it's in Cleveland. But he's a big collector, so seeing all your stuff is awesome.
Well, I'm a nerd, so a lot of it's Marvel.
Yeah, no, that's sweet.
That's why this podcast is a hodgepodge. I have a section of this podcast just for like Marvel stuff. So a buddy comes on, and that's why this podcast hasn't blown up, because it's not one thing; it's just a bunch.
Hey, it's that, and you're gonna find the right audience for you. That's great that you're doing it, and I can relate because it seems like you kind of jumped into it and just started, and I really admire that because that's kind of what I did too.
It was February of 2020. It was supposed to be what you were doing just in the podcast world. COVID hit, so then there's no sports. And then other football coaches started their own, and it became a friendly competition of like, how many coaches can we get on our shows?
That's great. Keep doing it. I would just say keep doing it. And if you love it, why not? Like, do it until. That's how I feel about sports. There are days where it's frustrating, but I just keep doing it because I love it. And it seems like you got a good thing going, and you recorded 2 shows in a day. So that's a success.
That's nothing during COVID. I think I did 6 or 8 in one day.
Wow. That's awesome. Good for you.
I have a schedule on my computer. I tell coaches exactly what time I'm open. Like I told you, I'm available at this time, because I have to.
Thanks for being patient with me too. I was out of town. I went to Europe for the first time, and so I had a lot of things going on, but I'm glad we can make it work. Yeah.
And then I wrote a book, so I had to put that there too.
That's awesome. What's your book called?
So you want to be a football coach, and it's like the truth nobody tells you. Like,
I love that.
It's very short, and because there's a lot of things I learned along the way that nobody told me was going to happen. And so I was just, I also do this to give back to coaches, and like, how can I give back? And so I wrote it. It's not big, but I was just like, I just want to do it. And
good for you.
It's like 100 pages. You'll read it in like an hour, but it's like,
hey, that's a good read for a coach. I love that. I'll have to check it out.
It's my life. It's like my experiences, and nobody told me this was going to happen. Nobody said this was going to happen. I didn't prepare to paint the field. I didn't get prepared to do laundry. As coaches, we're therapists. I didn't prepare to become a therapist.
Yeah, you are a really big part of those kids' lives, and I think I admire that a lot about coaches. The fact that it's more than just what's on the football field or on the diamond. Like it is. You are there for them through family stuff, relationship stuff, grades, school. all that. Love it.
Oh yeah. But yeah, thanks for coming on here.
Thank you for having me. I had a blast, and we'll do it again soon sometime.
And that's how we end it, just like